The fraud and corruption trial of former eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede and 21 others was delayed in the Durban High Court on Monday after a reported weekend shooting at the house of a state witness. State prosecutor Ashika Lucken told the court that the witness, who was due to begin her testimony, was not in a position to do so. It is believed that no one was injured in the incident. Lucken said that the police are investigating the shooting incident, but she added that other state witnesses have expressed concerns about their safety. The trial was postponed till Friday. However, the matter will return to court on Wednesday to allow the state to tell the court how it intends to proceed. Gumede and her co-accused face charges which include fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering in connection with the multi-million rand Durban solid waste tender. All right, we are now joined by the social worker, writer and social justice monitor John Clarke. He's joining us now via Zoom. He works with whistleblowers. Mr. Clarke, thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News. A very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me a chance to give some perspective.
Yeah, let's start then by you actually reacting to this particular story before we go into, the safety concerns of whistleblowers and witnesses in general in the country. Your thoughts when you saw this particular story?
Well, I can imagine that the poor folk in the National Prosecuting Authority and in the police are tearing their hair out in exasperation because it's a big trial. I mean, there's a lot of witnesses, there are a lot of accused, and I know that the expectation was that this would send a very strong signal of deterrence.
Yeah.
And to show that it's just no longer acceptable for people in political office to actually abuse their power in this way. So I have some empathy and support for them. I guess my concern is it's good from the point of view of having another data point from my perspective as a justice monitor to monitor the criminal justice system as a whole in the country. I've been monitoring the Senzo Mayiwa trial last year when it was going through all its ups and downs, and really was very perturbed about the way things were. We at least seem to have got that one back on track, and I just hope we will get this trial back on track as well.
Yeah. And then just moving to the safety and security then of whistleblowers and witnesses, I mean, that remains a problem in the country. The fact that there are, in fact, consequences for justice, as, I would assume that less people then want to be witnesses or be whistleblowers, especially in cases such as these. How is the issue then to be addressed? It seems that there's not enough or lack of legislation really in place protecting whistleblowers and witnesses.
Well, tomorrow I will be at an all-day seminar with people to look at the proposed legislation, amendments to the Protected Disclosures Act, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to welcome it and say thank goodness, but I promise you it's 3 years or if not longer too late.
Exactly.
Or delayed, put it that way. I won't say it's too late.
Yeah.
I would hate to be too sort of definitive about that. But I think that what concerns me now is that, if justice delayed, as they say, is justice denied.
Yeah.
But when justice gets continuously delayed endlessly, it actually becomes injustice, compounded. And what concerns me is that what we've seen so far, as I've monitored this case and others, is that you have the lawyers, the defense lawyers particularly, finding ways to kick the can down the road, finding ways to get delays, complaining about the fact they haven't been paid and all these things. Which, I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid.
Yeah.
But one gets a feeling that at the end of the day, the public at large eventually gets fed up, and they will then, I'm concerned, take the law into their own hands. Now, we're at the stage now where they've used various delay tactics to illegal, as it were, measures to basically delay them. I'm concerned now that what then tends to happen is that the criminals will then resort to extra legal means to try and actually subvert the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And it's very critical that they're not allowed to do that, because that's what then ends up becoming a case of vigilante justice, where people take the law into their own hands because they just get so fed up. And then we have even more compounded injustice because we don't have, and those two words, due process.
Exactly.
Due process is so important in terms of ensuring that the trial proceeds in a way that ensures that the outcome is as beyond reasonable doubt comes to a good conclusion. Yeah. And if we have any interference with that due process, it actually immediately contaminates the process, loses legitimacy, and leaves the average citizen feeling that, well, there's no hope. We better just take the law back into our own hands.
So my concern, you talk about this proposed legislation, and, I think it's great that you'll be, part of this. But, in South Africa, it seems we have all these amazing pieces of legislation, but really none of the justice that comes with it. So, we have this piece of paper that says this is how things should be, but at the end of the day, that's not ideally what's happening. That's not what's happening on the ground, what should ideally be happening. Is that not a worry for you? I mean, in terms of the fact that it will just be another piece of legislation that is there, but things go on as they have been?
Well, having legislation is one thing. It needs to be properly resourced, to ensure that the proper implementation of it. And what I would like to see in this new legislation is a proper process of incentivization of people to speak truth to power, to come forward. And I just wonder, for example, in the Zandile case, that witness is now sitting at home scared. There needs to be some greater incentives, as they have in the United States. They have the False Claims Act, which actually gives people who blow the whistle, particularly when it comes to commercial crimes, which are very difficult to prosecute because the defendants always have deep pockets, have good lawyers, and it's difficult. So the best way of getting a prosecution in a fraud and corruption type trial is to have somebody who is embedded in the system, who was an eyewitness to it, to come forward. And purists don't like the idea of incentivizing people that have just a pure monetary interest on it. Yeah. But it works in the United States extremely well. And I think our situation is so serious in this country. We've got to start looking more on the lines of being a pragmatic approach. I say that even against myself, because I'm a very highly principled person, like to think of ethics and morality as being sort of paramount. But I'm just thinking that we've got to look to another way of skinning the cat.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about this incentivizing financially, and I mean, for a whistleblower or a witness, I mean, even if you give them money, what's the use if you're dead? So you're sitting there with that money, but you're no longer there to actually receive it. So it still goes back to the issue of safety. The fact that you're more willing to speak because you're being incentivized either financially or otherwise, it doesn't stop you from not being safe. I mean, what's the point of a dead witness with some money?
Parking that idea, the point really I think should have made more clearly initially, that when legal measures fail, people will tend to resort to extra legal measures. Yeah. And therefore the prosecution, the police need to anticipate that as being a probable scenario, and to kind of toughen up risk assessment process and look at means of ensuring these whistleblowers or these witnesses are actually protected. I mean, we have a witness protection program. I know of people right now who I don't know where they are because they're in witness protection and they're going to be coming forward to basically testify against some really deeply corrupt people. Yeah. And my concern is that we've got to make so sure that the hawks and the police, because that's where who look after these folk, are absolutely beyond reproach, and that they are. And we do have good international best practice on how this is done. And South Africa doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there. They learn how to do it. And there is because crime, and particularly kind of fraud and corporate crime, is a global problem. So we need to forge the strategies with international best practice, and I'm afraid South Africa has been lagging very far behind in terms of keeping up with the program and the process of ensuring that we beat this thing. Partly because, let me finish with this point. Unfortunately, I think we still have far too many criminals running the show. I was at a meeting recently where Frank Chikane was saying we cannot have criminals running this country. He talked about the fact that we would have solved the problem that's happened with Eskom virtually overnight if we had only got rid of all the people that are benefiting from those corrupt practices. And we're just not getting to grips with it. Why aren't we? Because it's bad for business for those who are corrupt to have a well-functioning criminal justice system. So I would want to see that the civil society as a whole, the media particularly, has such an important role to play, to unite behind the fact of saying, folk, this is going to send South Africa into a failed state scenario if we do not basically have vigilance at every turn to make sure the police, the prosecuting authorities actually do their job. And lastly, maybe I'd say defense attorneys have a role to play here. They need to tell their clients and advise their clients. The more they've kicked the can down the road and all these delays, it actually makes them look even more guilty in the public eye. It might not be easy to secure a conviction in courts, but the public can see through it all.
All right, Mr. John Clarke, let's leave it there. We're out of time. Thanks very much for your time there. John Clarke, social worker, writer and Justice Monitor.